With no further ado, I would like to open the floor to the Mayor of Utrecht, Jan van Zanen, for his opening remarks.
Your Excellencies, dear all, welcome to Utrecht, to the heart of the Netherlands, the very heart of the Netherlands, and very green heart it is. Not only do I welcome you on behalf of our city government and the almost 350,000 people living in Utrecht, I also welcome you on behalf of the 160,000 trees that are growing in our city's streets, parks, and gardens. So for every 2 Utrecht citizens, there is 1 tree. And since our city, like many others in the world, is developing rapidly, in the future we will not only need more homes, offices, a more sustainable use of energy, comfortable space, public space and clean air, but also more trees and other nature-based solutions. Indeed, already our city counts numerous initiatives pointing into the direction of an even greener future. Supported by the city of Utrecht, many residents keep small gable or neighborhood gardens, look after school gardens where our young children get instruction about the sowing and harvesting of vegetables, fruits and herbs. Market gardens sell their vegetables locally in shops, restaurants and on markets. In one of our new districts, local residents, supported by my city, have taken the initiative to create an edible wood full of berries, nuts and chestnuts. And right in our city center, within a few years, Wonder Woods will be built. A non-identical pair of towers combining high-density living and working with a vertical green park. Larger scale efforts are the collection of rainwater in so-called wadis instead of a sewer system and on green roofs. Another large-scale effort is the wide-ranging project aiming at a more sustainable energy management of our homes. And of course, the world's largest bicycle shed, already functioning partially, even in the New York Times you could have read about it, near Central Station. Over 12,500 parking spaces for bikes. Come to that in Tirana, not yet I think, maybe in a few years. All ample proofs, dear all, of the creative and effective ways a city can contribute to a greener and healthier world. Just starting at the very beginning, our own houses, streets, squares, canals and parks. And in doing this, there is real urgency. Most of the world's cities develop at high speed. Our own population will increase with 20% within 20 years. Still more and more functions will have to be concentrated in a limited space. All the more limited because the city of Utrecht has decided, and rightly so, to accommodate its expansions within the city boundaries. And then, how do we create good access in this more and more concentrated city? How do we improve air quality and reduce noise pollution? How do we achieve our goal of climate neutrality in 2030? And how do we preserve public space and how do we make it more attractive? In brief, how do we create a healthy urban environment? For a start, we firmly believe that urban development strategies should make people happier, our environment healthier, and our economy more sustainable. We are convinced that for any such strategy, we have to focus on health. In our view, public health should even be given priority in all fields of policy, urging residents and other stakeholders in the city and surrounding region to follow, forging partnerships to do their part in creating a healthier place to live. More and more cities, for example, will need a new approach to mobility, like we do in our new city center, the area around Central Station, where you are right now. a highly urban area, but we keep on focusing also on green spaces, health and sustainability, by creating more space for pedestrians and cyclists, while arranging car parking facilities in the city's outskirts, by planning lively shopping areas and by planting trees even on a newly constructed passageway across the railway tracks. You can see it from here. And our role in this field as governments of the city and region of Utrecht varies according to the circumstances, just between encouraging, organizing or executing. More than ever, the workers of our own mobility department cooperate with their health and urban development colleagues, with our citizens, with local knowledge institutions, private companies, specialized startups, and other innovators in the field of urban mobility. It is a partnership to which we think there is no alternative. We need everybody's knowledge, experience, and spirit of enterprise. And therefore, it's a great honor to mention some of the inspiring expert initiatives in this field that we have that have their home base in Utrecht. Innovators whose ideas are of use for any developing city in the world. Ideas that are practical and workable, but also make use of the state-of-the-art IT technology. The project We Drive Solar of the Utrecht entrepreneur Robin Berg, for instance, is an example for that. The idea is that cars store and use locally produced solar energy, not inconsiderably reducing emissions. For the involved companies like General Electric, Tesla and Renault, Utrecht serves as a living lab. Last year, Utrecht has integrated Mr. Berg's concept into a large-scale European cooperation, including it in the urban innovation platform that we are building with the cities of Gothenburg in Sweden and Nice in France. And with this cooperation between European cities in mind, it is easy to make finally a connection with the paramount importance of European structural funds for the necessary development and upscaling of local projects. I hope, dear guests, that the start of this European Green Week will contribute to the bringing together of many, many cities, initiatives, institutions, companies and people who share the ideal of healthy urban living for everyone in green, healthy and smart cities. Utrecht is happy to host, together with the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, the official opening of the EU Green Week, ready to inspire and to be inspired by cities all over Europe and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor van Zanen. I think we could not have found a better place to hold this conference than here in the center of the country, in a city that really doesn't just talk but also does. Much appreciated. I would like to now give the floor to EU Commissioner Carmenu Vela. He's the Commissioner for Environment, Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, and he will do the official opening of the EU Green Week. Welcome.
Thank you very much, dear State Secretary, dear Mayor, and dear Executive Director, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Green Week. And before I start my formal welcome, let me just say a happy Natura 2000 Day. The 21st of May is the day that we celebrate the fact that almost 1/5 of our continent is nature protected at the European level. 65% of the EU population lives within 5 kilometers of a Natura 2000 area. For the Netherlands, almost 40% of its Natura 2000 areas lie at least partly in urban and semi-urban areas. This year, there is a lot, therefore, to celebrate. A major increase has just been proposed in the EU budget for the LIFE program, which helps fund Natura 2000. But there is also a lot to be concerned about. The recent UN IPBES report drew attention to the enormous pressures on our planet's biodiversity. This is a challenge for all of us at every level. This is one reason why I am so delighted to share the opening of Green Week with my colleague Eric. In fact, I think all of our opening guests together symbolize what this year's Green Week is all about. For green cities to truly blossom, coordination needs to flourish at all levels. So it's great to see so many levels represented here on stage. We have a mayor, we have a minister, a European representative, and a global director. All the actors we need to make a city greener. Well, almost all the actors, because we are still missing the most important one, and that is you, the people who live in these cities. In Europe, you are the 75% city dwellers, 3 out of every 4 Europeans. Our job and our responsibility is to serve you, and that is what this week is all about, finding the best ways to serve you. Thank you, Utrecht, and thank you, Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, for organizing and hosting today's celebration. It is clear that a great deal of work has gone into it, and it is very much appreciated by all of us. In many ways, the whole of Green Week is a celebration. It is a celebration of what can be achieved when we put sustainability at the very heart of city planning, and when we make sure that everyone has a voice. 2 weeks ago, I opened the Eurocities campaign, Cities for Europe. The line of my speech that got the biggest response was when I said, we all know that we are at our happiest when we are listened to. That listening is what a green city is all about. It is how we get the departments in the city working together, not against each other, working together on one shared single vision. Transport, water, waste, schools, housing, health, parks, all of them setting their plans to the same long-term sustainable strategy of the city. But as I said, it is the citizens of the city, it is the citizens who make the city, the people who live and breathe in the city, who work and play in the city. They are the ones who benefit so much from a well-planned green environment. One thing I have often noticed about citizens is their long-term thinking. They can see much further ahead than short-term political priorities. And that's why it is so important that they have a decisive say in decision-making. So that is what we are celebrating this week in our EU Green Week: progressive, democratic, and green cities. During the week, across Europe, from Utrecht to Ljubljana, from Madrid to Stockholm, events will be taking place to show just how much a sustainable city can improve the local lives. We will be showcasing our European green capitals and our Green Leaf winners, and we will be sharing their amazing stories. But there will be so much more. We will learn from the many cities that are implementing plans to reduce and manage municipal waste. I am certain you know that the Netherlands is at the very forefront in the EU in terms of its recycling rates. And municipal landfilling is more or less a thing of the past. But even the excellent can improve. You are still producing a lot of waste, 520 kilograms per person each year, and that is almost 10% above the EU average. Being Dutch, I'm sure you will find a way to bring that down. Many Dutch cities are leading the way, testing innovative solutions to prevent waste and even aiming to become zero-waste communities. And we will be hearing from them later on this week. And I do hope that we will all be following their lead. We will also get inspired by cities that, like Utrecht, make rivers and canals clean so that people can swim in them again. You will see and you will hear about the concept of the circular economy in action. I will be visiting an example myself in Utrecht later on today, where a cooperative of sustainable entrepreneurs have built their own commercial space and recuperated materials. You will hear about some of the latest policy developments coming from the Commission and how they can help support cities in the transition towards becoming more circular, in the transition becoming more clean and green. That includes the latest waste reduction targets that should be passed into law by EU ministers this week, reducing landfill to just 10% by 2035 and setting a target to get municipal waste recycling up to 65% by 2035, not to mention a specific recycling target for plastic packaging of at least 55% by 2030. You will also be hearing about Europe's latest commitments on drinking water. Just 2 generations ago, Europe was a place where untreated wastewater from industry and from households flowed straight into rivers, lakes, and the sea. Today, things are very, very different. Thanks to European leadership, our rivers and seas are recovering, and we can drink water from the tap across the continent. On the 1st of February, the Commission proposes new rules for drinking water. This proposal is also a strong answer to the European Citizens' Initiative Right to Water. The proposal ensures that tap water is perfectly safe and healthy, not just in Utrecht, but everywhere else in Europe. But let me return to the theme of nature. Scientists are beginning to realize the importance of something that grandmothers have been telling us for generations. When it comes to your health and to social challenges, nature has a major role to play. Here in Utrecht, you have understood this very well, and you are making certain that the city protects and works with its natural assets. And I am looking forward to visiting the Grift Park, hearing the story of its transformation from industrial wasteland to beautiful recreational space that brings the community together. We will also be unveiling our Green City tool this week. The tool is a very simple self-assessment and benchmarking tool for cities. It also acts as a source of information and advice for anyone wanting to learn more. And I would urge all of you to take a look and to try it out. And there is so much more to happen. There are hundreds of examples of great practices to share. We will use the week to learn and to listen and to further our urban agenda for the European Union, which has already seen 12 partnerships established in key areas of urban policy. Cities, member states, the Commission, key businesses and NGOs are all of them working together to produce action plans to make our EU policies better suited for our cities. And of course, we would also like to tell you about how the Commission is helping to fund the transition to more sustainable cities. The European Commission's proposal for the next long-term EU budget clearly supports the EU sustainability agenda organized around climate action and environment protection. This is something which we were discussing this morning with the State Secretary. Not only do we have it integrated into all our major spending programs, but, as I said earlier, LIFE, the environment-specific funding program, has been substantially increased to 5.45 billion euros. And this is an excellent piece of news since LIFE supports many of these urban projects. So let me end on that positive note. My congratulations again to Jan and the City of Utrecht for this fantastic opening, and thanks Stintje and Derek for showing, with their presence here, the commitment of every level of governance to making European cities greener. And obviously, thank you all for listening so intently. And now, for all of the Green Week, it is my turn to listen to all of you. Have a wonderful Green Week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Vella. Much appreciated. And you have more to celebrate this year because you're also one of the cultural capitals of Europe right now. We have some more interesting people with us this morning to comment on the EU Green Week and its significance. I would like to invite first to the stage our Deputy Minister of the Environment, Stientje van Veldhoven. Our motto for today, Ms. van Veldhoven, is Green Cities for a Greener Future. I wondered for you, as a member of the Dutch government, how important is the EU Green Week, or is it just greenwashing?
Well, I think it's really crucial, and I can tell that I'm already jealous of the commissioner who's now going on a tour, visiting all these other cities, because I think we need each other's examples to create our better policies at home, to be inspired, but also to link all of these beautiful initiatives. So the Green Week is a fantastic initiative, and I'm very proud that the opening is here today in Utrecht.
Indeed. And what is the biggest issue in the Netherlands in greening the cities? We heard from the commissioner just now that we do have to improve some of our behavior, especially to do with rubbish. But what is the biggest issue in greening the cities here?
Well, interestingly enough, of course, when you are preparing for such a meeting, you have your staff, and my staff working on mobility said, it's mobility, it's the most important. But if you look at all of these issues that we have to tackle, we see that we need to tackle both housing, we need to tackle biodiversity, we need to tackle recycling, and we need to tackle mobility. For me, the latter two are the most important in my portfolio. I work a lot on the circular economy. The Commissioner and I just discussed that this morning. But of course, in transport, we have a huge challenge. If we look towards our conglomerate here of cities in the Netherlands, we're going to have 500,000 people flowing to those cities in the next 10 years. In the city of Amsterdam, now every day we have about 230,000 cars entering the city every day. In 10 years, if we don't do anything, that will double, which is going to make it impossible for anyone to enter the city. So we need to look towards other solutions, more public transport, and also making sure that our bikes get a more serious part of our mobility portfolio. I think the minister or the mayor already mentioned 13,000 bikes can be stationed here at Utrecht Central.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it would be even more incredible if you think that each and every one of those bikes could be a car. Just imagine another 13,000 cars in the center of Utrecht, and that shows you how much cycling can be a solution for transport in the city, which has great benefits for both health, direct health through cycling, but also indirect health effects through air quality, noise reduction, etc. So we need to look at the entire portfolio. And one of the other interesting concepts, which I think would be good to share here, is that we have, in about 7 cities in the Netherlands, there will be 5,000 new houses that will be built with a shared car system. So you don't get a parking spot, but you get a shared car as part of the house which you buy. And so through these kind of innovative solutions, I think we can provide for clean and healthy city, wonderful cities to live in, with also mobility that actually works. So we have a lot to do.
Excellent. Last question. What do you expect from the EU to make this all happen? Money.
No. Oh. No, it's not just about the money. Because a lot of things just make sense. But we need the leadership, and I'm very happy with this commissioner who shows leadership in all kinds of areas. But for example, we need good CO2 reduction targets for transport. And when we set those targets at the European level, all of our industries are going to comply, and we can make a big difference. So yes, of course, money is always very helpful in making sure that new initiatives get off the ground, but it's also about inspiring each other. It's also about setting the framework and setting the rules, leading the way, and therefore European cooperation is going to be key in achieving all of these goals.
Great, thank you very much. Stientje van Veldhoven. May I ask you to stay on the stage, and then ultimately we'll end up with 5 of us for a photo opportunity. Perhaps the most important moment of the day. May I now invite to the stage Erik Solheim, who is the Executive Director of the UN Environmental Program. So, Mr. Solheim, tell me, what is you're from Norway, right? What is your own personal iconic example of the greenest city that you would all like us to know about and to visit?
Well, let me first of all congratulate Utrecht, what all you have achieved, because the ending question to her was what's most important. Most important is leadership. It's all about leadership. It's not about money. When there is good leadership in cities and nations, you can move very, very fast. And that's why the examples from Utrecht about tree planting, about bicycling, all this is so exciting. And let me add also the leadership from the Netherlands and the leadership from the European Union. We so much need this leadership. From my personal experience, well, my city is Oslo. When I did grow up, there is a river system through Oslo. It was completely closed. There were very polluting factories everywhere. No one was walking there, and they even destroyed the lower part of the water system, put it into pipes. Now it's opening up. There is no polluting factories there. People are walking. There's a restaurant. This is the most lovely and livable part of Oslo city. Please come and visit. And of course, this has happened in so many other cities in the world.
And who is showing the most leadership? Is that because as Commissioner Vela mentioned, we have all levels of government here today, which is extraordinary. Who is in the lead right now, would you say? Is it the cities who say they're closest to the issues, or is it a larger government body like the EU that has more overview?
Well, from my global perspective, I see leadership basically from 2 areas, from the European Union or Europe and from China. That's where we see the most rapid greening of cities. In Europe, there tend to be a negative view of China. Forget it. Oh. The fastest growing city in the world history, which is Shenzhen in southern China, was nothing there in 1980. Now it's between 15 and 20 million people in Shenzhen. It's also one of the greenest cities in the world. Zhejiang province in central China, I was just there a month back. They had done exactly what we did in Oslo, and I know what you have done in the Netherlands, opening up the rivers, curbing all pollution, making the wetlands part of the city system, and gaining also economic terms, because any number of tourists are coming to stay in these beautiful areas. So China and Europe is absolutely indispensable for leadership, but of course leadership can come from governments, from mayors, and as well from the private sector and business, and from civil society. You need all these coming together.
And I was just going to say, as Commissioner Vela said, what we need now is you, us. We need citizens to pick up on this. How do we get people concerned and engaged?
I may think that's the wrong question. I think people are engaged and concerned. I'm not really aware of anyone who's not concerned of my city. I'm very much concerned of Oslo, okay, more than on Utrecht. But people in Utrecht for sure are concerned with that city. So it's all about getting the leadership of the city and the land to have the dialogue with people, dialogue with business, dialogue with civil society, dialogue with individuals as to how to move forward. And I see an enormous attention to the environment issues which are close to people. 2 years back, no one in the world really cared about plastic. Now plastic is at the top of the global environment agenda, and one reason is it's so close to me, and I can do a lot myself, and for sure city government can do a lot. And yes, indeed, we need recycling systems, but we need also to start with the most simple. I mean, the European Union has a plastic strategy, fantastic, but let's also start with what is really simple. We can all avoid straws. Why do we need them? We can all avoid plastic bags. There are alternatives out there. There is no need to artificially put plastic into perfumes and soaps. There is no need for it. Let's get rid of all we don't need. And then next, we face the plastic we do need and how to recycle that.
What a fantastic call to action. Thank you so much, Erik Solheim. And may I now invite Mariette Pennaerts to the stage. She is a member of the Executive Council of the Province of Utrecht. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning. One of the things that Utrecht puts a lot of emphasis on, and then speaking of the province Utrecht, is air quality. How do you do?
Well, as said before, leadership is very important, but also in green cities, Mr. Vella said, the voice of the people is important. And we have a program on air pollution and the quality of air, just to improve, of course. And we work bottom up. So we have initiatives with institutes, with organizations, with citizens to make people more aware of air pollution, but also to empower them to do something about it themselves, for example. So in the city of Amersfoort, there's a project, it's called Citizen Science, and people are measuring air quality themselves. And, well, what's happening next? When they're aware of the situation, they're also more empowered to act themselves and find coalitions with people to improve. And we, as a province, together with all the other partners, are supporting that.
Well, we heard Mayor van Zanen, and you will apologize that I will start our discussion with Mayor Veliaj. Mayor, perhaps you would like to share with us a couple of your starting points that you have in Tirana with regards to bringing nature back to Tirana.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the hospitality. It's the day of the Pentecost, I hear. It's a public holiday in the Netherlands. So I'm hoping the Holy Spirit of the European Commission will ascend and try to amend a lot of our sinful behavior with nature over the years. But no, jokes aside, I will continue actually with one last joke, which pretty much sums up how we're divided in this room. It reminds me of a joke of a rabbit in a forest who was so scared and living a life of paranoia that he was trying to seek help and was going to all the other animals in the forest and saying, you know, I can't live like this. I can't be running away from my life. I'm tired of being the bottom of the food chain. Please help me with a solution. So all the animals said, look, you have to go to the owl with the thick glasses. He works for European Commission. He's an expert. So the expert should be able to tell you how to get rid of this. So the little rabbit goes to the owl and he says, you know, please help me out. How do I sort this thing? How can I not live a life with fear? Because if you become a lion, you're the top of the food chain. No one wants to eat the lion. You're king of the forest. The rabbit is so excited. He says, you know, thank you so much. I've been waiting my whole life for this solution. But can I please ask one follow-up question? And the owl says, of course. The rabbit says, how exactly do I become a lion? And this is where the owl says, you know, my friend, we're only in charge of strategic thinking, not project implementation. Project implementation you have to do on your own. So you know, as you saw, the first row of the owls left. So now the rabbits are stuck here to actually make this happen. But I wanted to share a little bit of a story because I think it's understandable on how a city like Utrecht, a country like the Netherlands, many members of the European Union who've had a long tradition, who went through industrialization a long time ago and had their reckoning time with the industry in the 50s and the 60s. But the question is, how do countries that went through a North Korea-style dictatorship in Eastern Europe transform? So a brief history of time. In 1991, the city that I'm honored to serve now only had 200,000 people and a total of 17 cars, 17. So only the Politburo of the Communist Party could drive a car. And the rest of the people were walking or biking or using the bus. Shortly thereafter, in 25 years, the city has 1 million people, so it has quintupled, and now has 200,000 cars. So one day we went to make a little calculation. And we asked people, said, what is the most important thing in your life in a focus group? And people said, Mr. Mayor, you know, what kind of question is that? Of course, my children. They are the light of my eyes. They are my life, blah, blah, blah. We said, well, look, if your children are the most important thing in your life, would you agree that you put your money where your mouth is? Yeah, of course. So let's do a little calculation on how an average family spends their income. We found out the average family spent 30% of the income on the car, only 20% on raising a child, because it was more expensive to buy, to fuel, to insure, and to take a car to the mechanic, plus parking, than to actually buy food, clothing, and books to raise, or toys to raise a child. And people were shocked because people said, no, how come our values that we profess so highly changed without no one asking permission? And all of a sudden, the car became a status symbol. So for many people, not only in Albania, but in Eastern Europe, it was a way to say, I escaped communism, I escaped poverty, and this is the trophy that can prove it, which was the metal box called the car. So the big question is, are we building cities for cars or are we building cities for people? And I think the invitation here took a note from Benjamin Barber. And he was famous for defining what cities are. Cities are places where we show up for public life, to go to university, like in Utrecht, to fall in love, to go and meet people, to go and protest against the government. This is where we show up for life. And the question is this a show up for life of people or a show up for life of cars? And once cities answer this sort of ethical question, then you start designing. Now, the criticism or sort of the joke between the owls and the rabbits is that mayors, Walt Disney said, look, dreaming is great, but the difference between a dream and a project is a project has a deadline and a budget. A dream doesn't. A dream, you can dream endlessly. But I think...
Recycle.
Exactly, and keep dreaming the same thing. But I think it is possible, also in poorer communities or sort of more modest economies like that of Albania, to get the public energized at a very, very low cost. And I'll be happy to maybe later share some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to get back to that, which also was addressed as leadership in the opening, and look into the political commitment part and what actually is needed also to develop and implement and maintain a long-term strategy. But still, I would like to get back really to the starting points. And if you give us one example of what Tirana is currently doing to really bring nature back to city.
Well, I'll give you two examples. One was this huge tree planting drive. And we found out in the city budget that we could only afford for maybe 10, 15, maximum 20,000 new trees with this new urban plan. We designed a city urban plan with Stefano Boeri. And if you refer to him without saying his name, he is the one who did Bosco Verticale, the vertical forest, in Milan, and sort of brought this new thinking to modern architecture. And we're working with a few groups here in Rotterdam, like OMA and MVRDV, to also retrofit a lot of the existing buildings in Albania to make them more green. But the reason we partnered with Boeri, we said, look, how can we bring this philosophy not to just one or two iconic buildings, but how can we get this for the whole city? So we went from the concept of Bosco Verticale, the vertical forest, to Bosco Orbitale, to orbital forest. How do, in a world and age where everybody's speaking about building walls to prevent the others from coming in, why don't we talk about a different wall? A wall that is permeable, and it's a wall of green that also signals an end to endless sprawl of the city. So then we calculated, and we wanted to plant 2 million trees by 2030, which is roughly 130 progressively 1,000 trees a year.
Excuse me, Mayor van Zaan, what was the number of trees in Utrecht?
160,000.
But they started early.
Yeah.
Okay.
We even have, I have more bikes than people in my city. So biking, how many bikes would you have? Also double to my, I think I have so much bike as you have people. And it's double.
I will get to that. That was my second point. So we figured, how can we get creative and unable to fund ourselves this? How can we do this? So we put a citywide challenge for every child to celebrate their birthday by planting a tree. So it started almost hysteria in the kindergartens, in the nurseries, in the schools. Sometimes, we get electronic companies complaining, filing a complaint in the city. And I said, why are you complaining? He says, what have you done? These kids don't want iPhones and iPads anymore. Everybody wants a tree because his friend has a tree, so now he wants a tree. So sometimes we devised a little app so people knew the exact GPS location and the kind of tree the city was planning in that area. But I think by doing this open source and rather having the government and the city having a monopoly, having people become shareholders by subscribing to an app that could then indicate the tree and the GPS location for the tree, it made a miracle. So we were able to plant 126,000 trees in one season. Now, the other thing, which I think rabbits are better than owls in fixing, is we partnered with the Dutch embassy in Tirana. And we said, look, the European Commission is spending millions. We are over-seminared, over-conferenced, over-trained, workshopped, and very little in sort of concrete terms. I mean, I know about Groningen and the bike thing, so much from the European Commission, but not a penny to actually plant or to design sort of safe, protected bikeways. So we decided to partner with the member state, which by using a fraction of what a conference costs, maybe a 1 hour worth of a conference, I think less than 10,000 euros, we hired a company from the Netherlands, and were able to design the first 10 kilometers of the downtown area. Then we created all of the downtown an open car-free zone. A bit of hysteria in the beginning, but children are major advocates of change that no one considers in policy making. Usually we as mayors and politicians, we're trained to only think of taxpayers and voters. But sometimes these very unusual suspects called children can be top advocates without voting for you or paying a penny. So I think you can do a lot more with a lot less if there's political will and you use it wisely, like the case with us in the Netherlands.
Thank you so much. I would like to look into what actually can we do with what, and look at the cost and benefit relationship. Mayor van Zaan, you have introduced your projects and activities here in Utrecht, and actually, ladies and gentlemen, you see quite a number of pictures here, both from Tirana and from Utrecht in mixed order, just to give you some idea of the two cities here as well. So Mayor van Zaan, what do you think is like the also economic benefit of the greening strategy here in Utrecht?
Well, if we don't are conscious of being a fastest growing city, that we have to address climate change, we have to address air pollution, we have to address mobility issues. If we don't do it, the economy won't run anyway. But that's a very sad or cynical motivation. But let me first address your point, your opening sentence. 4,000 years ago, we had cities, cities were planned. This summer I visited, I hope I pronounce it right, Utrecht?
Utrecht, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
and it's very old, antique. We don't have it in Holland because we were flooded anyway. We were not there yet, but they were there and made a city and a theater and a church, and you could swim and you could bathe. And 4,000 or 3,000 or 2,000 years later, they are ruins now, very beautiful, but they're still functioning. And I think the ultimate thing we should do now with city planning, realizing everybody's coming to the city, but we have to pedestrianize the cities. We have to give way to bikes. We have to make young people conscious of what's happening. And then it pays off also economically. If we're building around this central area, central station area, if we're making new buildings, then we do it in a way that in 20, 25 years, still the sustainability is new and is ahead. And there comes economy, sustainability, climate change together. Because we have to be aware, and that's your point, that if we only think in ideals and not in money, then it won't work also. So I hope that in the combination of all that, and we're responsible because it's happening on local level first, and we can't do without national government, we can't do without international, of course, and without funding and taxation and fiscal measures. But it has to happen here around the corner. And second point I would like to make is all those initiatives we are taking, Erion is taking, they need to be upscaled. Because now we have little things going on and very perspective, but now we have to scale up and make the combination with the solar energy, I told you, with the car, you know, and but then also Renault and General Electric have to join in, because those little things have to become big, and then they're payable, affordable.
We get back to the upscaling. Let me ask the two of you, because leadership was so much here in the opening as well. What was the initiation moment of Utrecht Tirana that made you also as mayors taking this up and being a champion of greening your cities? Was there any, or was it just a natural development?
Yeah. But I think it actually carries on to the mayor's answer. We found that it's not only, it doesn't only make ethical sense, but it also makes economic sense. In all the areas we pedestrianized in Tirana, despite the early hysteria of the car users, property value went up. In all the areas that we beautified and we put greenery, property areas went up. That means taxation out of property tax also went up. which means that you can basically start a cycle that generates income for all the parties involved, whether it's public or private or the communities. So that's number one. Number two, for anyone running for public office, you know, when you run for office and you ask people, who wants change? Everybody raises their hand and says, yeah, I want change. Yeah, there's someone raising their hand.
Over there.
Watch out because you're incumbent now.
But when you get elected and you ask the same people, the same question, who wants to change? People say, no, have Jan change first and Holger. I'll change later. So it's not, you know, it sounds like a sexy thing, but it's not as easy when it actually happens. But there are certain categories in society, like I said, children, who have no strings attached, who embrace change, who are not doing petty calculations, who are not indulged with dogma about how things were in the past and blah, 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 who are advocates of change. The first day we opened the downtown square, a complete pedestrian area. But before we did that, we said, why don't we have a day without cars? These parents were hysterical. They were beeping their horns. They were blocking the streets. But the children came up with bikes and rollerblades and hoovers and skateboards. And we said, well, why don't we try it one second time? And then there was less resistance. And then we said, why don't we do it a third time? And then there was no resistance. And then families were saying, why don't we do this every week? And then after we did it for several weeks, why don't we do it for good? You know, why don't we just have a complete downtown free of cars? So change can come, but change also should be incremental and progressive. You basically start with easy to pick fruit before you introduce drastic change, because not everybody is an owl. Not everybody is an expert who digs this stuff every day. You know, most people are going about their daily life, and some interruption can provoke a feeling of defensiveness. You say, I don't want to change my way of life. So in that regard, I think incremental change and showing that it can work and the world will not collapse from blocking a few streets from cars actually is one way to go. So but the third aspect, and the final on your question, is look, this is not a beauty pageant. It's not a beauty competition. Yeah. No. It's fine if some people hate you. You know, if you are out there wanting to be liked by everyone and not being threatened or cursed or whatever called names in the streets, then go and find another job. I mean, if you are in this job, you need to be prepared that some level of slime will end up in your face. But so is
sunny days.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that there was no initiation moment, but it was a development actually that you also promoted through stepping stones, like the festivals in Skanderbeg Square.
But you know, there's always sparks that start, and I think a lot of these sparks of these days without cars brought. Now we are in the final 6 for getting the European Best Public Space Award on June 20th with this project. So there's of course the sparks with the kids and the events, but eventually you sort of get the community to grow, and you have to constantly communicate. You know, I meet mayors all the time who said, I cannot believe they were against me. This was a no-brainer. What do you mean a no-brainer? How many times did you tell her, well, I made one press conference and no one liked it, so we just dropped it? No, it's a constant, it's like converting someone, you know? You have to constantly keep at it.
Can we hear you?
I'm not the guy who believes in initiation moments. I think we had 4,000 years of initiation moments. But if you would pin me down, I would say like 10, 15 years ago, when the combination of development of the east of Utrecht, a new area, new district in the west, but especially the renovation and concentration with the largest central station in the Netherlands, with the train, water, and the development in the center of this city with a big shopping mall, looking for the monumental Dom Tower. That combination made that we were confronted with reality. We are developing now so fast. How can we accommodate? And then it started. And I think it was symbolized by a thing we thought we couldn't do, like the start of the Tour de France, which was a big event, but also a biking event, you know, with bikes and sports, and made a combination. So if you would talk of initiation moment, I think around the time of the Grand Départ in Utrecht, 2015, Utrecht became awake and became more and more conscious of its green future.
What do you think, we addressed the need for upscaling. What are the biggest challenges for you in Utrecht to basically expand the experience that you have with the project so far?
Well then, of course, when there are small scales of initiatives, then nobody is hurt, or nobody's interest is being... But now when we scale up, then the confrontation, for instance, planning with citizens, with owners, with the architects, conceptualize those small, and that's difficult, but I think it has to be done. So it's emotional. Then some regulations hurt, because small you can do it in a pilot or an experiment, but then some laws have to be changed, regulations. Those are things that could be hurdles, but I think that the inspiration those pilots, those experiments give, will make the way that it happens. But it is a big fight, a struggle.
Well, I'm an urban planner from background. I know that most of the conflicts are around space in the city. So if I hear you bring nature back to cities in the various aspects you do, would you foresee also that people will fight over the slot where the park will be established and not the car park?
I'm not sure if fighting is the word, but having and being critical, I'm sure they will be. But let me put one thing. We are very successful with biking. But now you see already the problems arising from that. Because I have traffic jams biking. I have senior citizens criticizing everybody. We want to walk and we are slow. And then those bikes, they drive very fast. And it's an emotional issue. So we are successful with bikes, and it's better than with cars, especially in a city like this, or in every city. But even bikes have their problems. Also a question of scaling up. And we have to think, and private enterprise, startup, of course, they're inventing things to do. But every new development creates these new problems. But that's the way it is, dynamics.
What will you need, Erion, for making the Tirana strategy a lasting, a long-term strategy?
Well, I always say that the most difficult infrastructure project for a mayor is 10 centimeters long. It's sort of the space between here and here. 100 kilometers of bike lanes, we all know how to do. Once you have the budget, put the gravel, put the asphalt, put the signage. This 10 centimeters, how do you? And I think our toughest challenge is mentality change. But I think once, you question people's ethics and values, like we did with these focus groups about how much of an average salary was going to a car, then I think you elevate the bar and you put a standard that whosoever comes behind you will definitely have to plant 120,000 a year, because otherwise they'll be in trouble, because everybody's going to call, you're much poorer than the previous guy, so down with you. So once you sort of make these benchmarks for everyone then to keep, you've definitely instituted some sort of a social or political bar of what it is acceptable now to be called change in our city.
But isn't that like a political game? And the next mayor, hopefully you will stay in office for long, but the next mayor...
Well, looking at how well he's aged, it's not... it's
Keep your mouth shut, I'll lock you up.
Mayor Van
I'm actually not so scared of the future.
How will you take care of the continuation of the story beyond your term?
I think what we're doing now is fundamental. And of course, ideologically or qua temperament or the tone of voice, you can do it differently, faster, slower, or in a different, mixture of measures. But I think fundamentally, what Dutch society, what international society, and especially in cities and urban surroundings, fundamentally what we're doing now will be the track whoever will be mayor in the next 10, 15 or 20 years. I'm sure.
Can I give you one small example?
Please, please.
So about a year ago, we decided to put a plastic surcharge for all the supermarkets in the city. And people were like, oh, Mr. Mayor, no, come on, this is like Holland now? No, it's not Holland, it's not Vienna, but we're just going to charge for plastic bags because they're polluting all of our canals, and once we have floods, one of the major causes of flooding is not the rain, it's plastic bag that stucks every hole. So we're just going to do it this way. So there was a bit of a revolt in the first week, but then we kept pushing to go even more radical. And last week the government passed an order to ban all plastic bags as of 1st of July. So this is... But just by putting a surcharge of 5 pennies, 5 cents, it already was reduced to 60%. So we realized it wasn't a question of money, but it was a psychological hurdle. If someone is going to the supermarket and spending already 30 euros on merchandise, well, 5 pennies is not going to make a dent. But the idea that you paid for something that you thought was a human right, you know, was a human entitlement, already gets people agitated. So, I refuse to pay this 5 cents for the mayor, I'm just going to use my clothing bag. But the way you make it now sustainable, because now there's a government order. So already suppliers will not be exporting or importing or producing, shutting down their factories. So once this has become to this level, then it becomes sustainable, because it will be extremely difficult for politicians in the future to go and undo already this law and legislation.
Well, we walked the food festival last night, and there might be some plastic challenges here in Utrecht, just as a side remark. For the two of you, before we close, or to close, because we want to bridge also in the afternoon's program, there is this future in the cities debate that we will have in the afternoon. On the same notion, continuation of the business, what is your topic or your question for the afternoon panel?
Well, I think there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So I think clearly the rabbits need to communicate more, and we need to find out how certain cities are doing certain things. You know, sometimes I'm looking for examples with the bikes from Holland, but sometimes I'm looking from Bogota and what Mayor Peñalosa is doing with Ciclovia and the sort of the bike-only Sundays. So sometimes a lot of creative examples are not those next door, but are, you know, on the other side of the planet. So ICLE and other organizations can definitely play a role to bridge a lot of this knowledge. And I think knowledge is king these days. It's not the money. I mean, we're not a member of the European Union. I hope, you know, the Netherlands is one of the few skeptical members about our opening negotiations. I really hope that skepticism wanes, so at least it gives progressives like myself still a narrative to believe in the European Union and what it represents. But I think even within Europe, we have fantastic examples on how we've sort of bridged these divides. And my advice would be for those who represent the owls, would be like, no, less conferencing, less seminaring, more actual tools that the mayors can use and access. Mayors are very thrifty by nature. You know, the mayor here has to think of his budget every single day, you know, wakes up in the morning. So once you get the thrifty representatives to manage those limited resources, I think miracles can happen. And what I liked what the mayor said is that cities are by default open air laboratories. So a lot of the electrical transport we're also testing. And usually, you know, you don't have to be a first world city or, you know, post-communist city. Many cities can be living laboratories to work with business. And I think sometimes we neglect that business and innovation are also an important factor to be equated in the city management.
Now you did not give us the question for the afternoon's panel, but I forward to...
The question is how business and, yeah.
How's the combination being made? I think we realize cities are necessary for a green future, so that's good at the start of this EU Green Week that cities have their role to play. But then I think this afternoon we have something above this discussion that is, you could say, the Sustainable Development Goals. Because all we're doing are serving those goals. And my question would be, how can those SDGs help us to make it practical for the people, not only for the people, because if people understand what we're doing, even if we have those large discussions and every, in the area and about everything, how can we make it practical and tangible for the people around the corner?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks the two of you. Thanks for listening to us. And back to Tracy, please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Very good to see you. Thank you, Holger.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Truly inspiring. And as luck and chance would have it, in NRC Handelsblad of Friday a week ago, I had an interview with Stefano Boeri, who mentioned his greening of Tirana, and who also mentioned the project Wonderwoods now being built in Utrecht. Let me remind you that we have our workshop starting at 11:30 upstairs, and then we have the Creathon 4 teams working along this corridor here where you can go have a look. The subjects of the workshops that you can attend are Nature and Cities of the Future, room 801, Serious Gaming for a Green Urban Environment, room 802, 1,000 Opportunities, European Urban Nature-Based Solutions to Urban Challenges in room 803, Business Models and Citizen Engagement in room 804. And then we will break for lunch at 12:45. Thank you very much and see you back here this afternoon.